finally time for the rebuild of the Marin Bobcat Trail. I didn't have any video of when I first got it. The only thing I have is this vertical video. So basically it was all stock with Acera components and the recoil cranks with the stamped chain rings on. I modified it within the first week of owning it, but I didn't give it a full rebuild. So I didn't pull it apart, clean everything, make sure everything was greased. And I like to put frame protective coating on the inside, so like frame saver or something similar to that, just to prevent from internal rust. So I hadn't done any of that, so I really wanted to rebuild it at some point. So this is the video of that rebuild. I'll put a build list of all the components in the description below, but these are DX hubs laced to Araya rims, or Araya. These are some Shimano Altus cranks. They're quite nice. I like the big blocky look to them. The frame is in quite a good condition. Those are the stamped recoil cranks. I didn't actually check the numbers, but they're probably the recoil ones, so I just chucked those out. So I can't actually remember if I pulled the bottom bracket out when I changed the cranks. I don't see why I wouldn't have. I think I did, but I couldn't remember. So the bike came to me in pretty good condition. There was probably only 1 or 2 spots of surface rust. So it's quite a good usable bike. It's not completely immaculate, so I don't have to worry too much about scratching it up. Not that I really would, but an immaculate bike, I'd probably feel a little bit guilty putting like the first scratches on it if it's survived for like 30 years without getting a scratch. But once I got the bottom bracket out, I started cleaning up all the parts. The brakes got quite a light polish, and then some of the other components like the cranks and even the levers, I gave them a polish as well, but nothing too severe. I just used some Scotch pads and then some metal polish to polish them up. So these are the Marin Lite brakes. They came as an additional extra from Marin. Apparently a lot of these have cracked, so that would indicate that they're weak. I don't know. I've never had any of these, so it's the first time setting them up. So remembering which way everything went was a little bit tricky, mainly because I wasn't putting it straight on the bike, so I was just sitting it on the bench. But they're pretty straightforward. They can only really go one way. I gave the bolts that hold the pads a quick spray paint as well. And the badge was coming off, so that's why it's got some cable ties on it. I just put some contact cement underneath it, and that'll hold it down until it's set. Now this stuff, you just spray inside it and wiggle the frame around as much as you can, and then, so it spreads really easily. I like to sort of have it upside down or up one way, I spray it all through, and then once I think it's done, then turn it back upside down, and then like go through and spray it up that side again. Just put my finger in one end to block that hole off, then spray a whole bunch in. Tip it around. Check that finger, make sure it's got some on it. Now the stuff that I use, it spreads really nicely, so I don't have to use too much, but if you're stuff that doesn't spread that nicely, then yeah, you can't really do too much. You don't want it in the threads because, well, this stuff in particular, it tries to a film, so I wouldn't want it in the bottom bracket. So when I do that, I normally just put some grease in the threads so that it doesn't set in the threads. And then just spray it in every tube, every which way, and shake it a bunch. And paste to sort of whirl it around as well, if you can, outside. Then just spray a bunch more, keep spraying it. You can use the vent holes to get it in as well. and just more shaking and waving. And then just keep filling it up, really. It'll leak out some of the orifices, but don't have to worry too much, it just wipes up. So these are some of the components that I polished. It's before. You just use some WD-40. Pretty straightforward. This is a scrubbing cloth, so it's the coarse Scotch pad.
Still got all the marks.
It didn't quite remove some of the marks. I think they're just watermarks.
So just the coarse pad wasn't really getting out all the marks that I wanted it to, so this is just some 400 grit. Just gonna go over it quickly. Yeah, this is gonna come off. I'm not too fussed about it because okay. So this is after the 400 grit. As you can see, all the water spots have gone. There are some sort of marks here which I still need to go over. And then these mark just that little spot there. And the others have faded quite a bit. Now onto the final one.
If you want to know how to polish up cranks to quite a high standard, I've got another video about it, but it takes a whole day, or a couple of days really, to get them to like a mirror finish. So keep that in mind. This is basically why I did like this quick finish. But even that there, you can see that it looks a whole lot nicer than what it did previously. So pretty decent improvement for not a whole lot of work. Nice dual Alex rear derailleur. Polishing the levers, this was done just so everything sort of matches a little bit better.
Oh, that's so much nicer. So I don't know if you can see, there's a bit of a crease mark here. It was all bent over and then it was peeling back, and it was awful before. So now I've got to clean the whole frame up. There are bits where there's gunk and that sort of stuff, normally in the chainstay area. A little bit around by where the front derailleur goes, and then obviously in the dropouts where like wheel grease, hub grease gets. So all that needs cleaning off. The sticker is not factory, that's a Team Dream Chubby Bobcat sticker. A blue lug, little happy boy. Just because it's cool and I really like blue lug, so yeah, shout out blue lug. Everything's all cleaned up. I just barely went over this rear derailleur because I didn't want the steel to look too out of place next to a polished alloy. This needs to be repaired. This is just some soapy water.
That's a pretty funny transition. I get around to repairing the bottle cage later on. I don't really have any clips of actually repairing it, but I'll go over it later on. I love that grease gun. I've been using it for pretty much everything that I can. So I grease the inside of the seat tube as well as greasing the seat post. It doesn't really hurt anything. This is some mild polish, basically just a cream polish, so it's not too abrasive, but it does get off some of the scuffs, which is quite nice. And it restores a bit of the gloss to old tarnished paintwork as well, if that's your thing. If not, then yeah, don't use the polish. I do this to the fork as well. I had to be pretty careful around all the lettering. Yeah, they were stuck on as individual letters, so some of them had started peeling.
Now that the fork is all polished, I've put some of that rust proofing on the inside of this as well. It's actually leaking out. I need to grease up the bearings. I've degreased them and cleaned them out all nicely. They're in pretty good condition.
Grease gun coming in clutch. I normally just use a bit of grease on my finger and then press it in. But if you've got a grease gun, then it saves a bit of mess. It saves grease. all the grease. Grease everywhere. Grease it all up. And slide it in all nice like. So these handlebars, they're a Salsa Moto Ace bar, but they were polished by the old owner. So he went through quite a bit of effort into hand polishing the handlebar, and he had the stem polished, but I think the stem was polished by a professional, because that's quite a finicky little piece. So huge thanks to the old owner. And these are, I believe, to be the 17-degree Salsa bar. Quite a nice little bit of back sweep, make them really nice comfortable handlebar. So when I was putting the bike back together, by this point I couldn't find any nicer thumb shifters, so I just used these low-level ones. They have a really nice smooth actuation, so I didn't really mind using them until I find some nicer ones anyway.
So after putting this derailleur on, I dropped the screw. I found that one of the limit screws was bent. So I tried another limit screw that was straight, and turns out that the thread or the hole is actually skewer. So every time I would screw it in, the head would end up contacting the edge of the derailleur body. So the fix is I'm going to use a longer bolt, and this is where the limit needs to be. So I'm going to chop off about that much of it so it doesn't look so gaudy. So the head should be resting just above the rest of the derailleur body. And that's it all done. I ended up having a different bolt that just had a smaller head, so it sits like a little bit more flush.
And that was all for that day. I actually completely forgot about that rear derailleur bolt missing. Yeah, it seems to be working fine, so problem solved, I guess. So setting these brakes up was a new experience for me, but I actually quite liked it. I'm not really against setting up cantilever brakes anyway. I don't find it overly difficult, but setting these up was, it felt like nice and smooth, rotating it for the toe in and getting it all aligned. Yeah, pretty nice. And they look really nice too, just stubby little polished brake arms. After testing them, they worked just great, so I have no intention of changing them to a nicer cantilever brake. Setting up the cables, I had a bit of an accidental color matching situation. So I have a reel of Jaguar brake cable. It's quite a nice cable, and it just so happened to match this frame, so I threw it on there. It looks quite nice, and the brake feel is really nice through this cable as well. So it's a win-win. I didn't want it to go anything too bright for this bike. I wanted the standard stem and fork color. There's a couple of other little bits like the bottle cage and the seat post clamp, I think with that same color. So I wanted them to stand out over everything, so I didn't want too brighter cables. That's why I went with those gum grips as well. Just makes those colors of the frame pop that little bit. It's also a good idea just to use black grips, black cables, when you want to emphasize the frame color. It seems to draw the eye away when you have bright colors on components. You can do a really good job, but it takes quite a bit of effort to match the colors up nicely. But if you do so, it can make the colors pop that a little bit extra. Say if you have like matching grips to the outline of a decal or something like that. It can be done, but a simple way to make the frame pop is just to use neutral black or just white or something like that for the grips and cables. Sometimes it pays to have a few different colored cables and bits like that just sitting around so you can eyeball it. Yeah, I don't always show like the entire process of setting a bike up. So normally I do handlebars and stem length first, just roll it around the yard a few times and go from there with colors and that sort of thing. But I might make a bit of a video showing sort of like the brainstorming behind a build sometime. This front one was a little bit more finicky than the rear. I don't know why. Sometimes things just don't go smoothly. So it takes quite a bit more adjustment. I get there in the end though, and then it works great. But it's just trying to make the shuttle cable that 90 degrees for ultimate mechanical advantage.
last but not least, the seat. But because I just pulled this off a bike for a rebuild, I'm going to put this on it temporarily.
So now's the best part, finally getting to ride it after rebuilding it, having it sitting around unbuilt for a little while. So the first thing I did was strapped a GoPro between my legs and then did a couple of wheelies in the backyard.
Canadians, eh? Tukiko. Shit.
So the bike was handling overall really nicely. The Rockstar fork gives it a nice supple ride. It's stiff enough, but not too stiff. The SimWorks super yummy tyres tend to it got a little bit loose in the mud as expected because they don't have super huge knobs, but they're handling the gravel and the road really nicely. They're rolling quick enough for me on the road, which it's probably not really a good benchmark to use. But as you can see, they get up to some pretty good speed. So no complaints. I didn't have any flats, so nothing astronomical in that department. But I really like how they performed. Nice amount of grip, really predictable tread arch over the tyre. So some tyres are quite flat on the top, and it leads to like a weird transition as you go around corners. But these are beautiful. I did this jump here a couple of times, and it's a gravel landing, and you sort of land on a step. But I didn't die. Didn't have any pitch flats. It was great.
Fuck! Ow. I did not see that rock. Happened pretty quick, but I tried to... Yeah, it's a good one. It's an instant bump. And my thigh just smashed up against the seat, and I think the top tube actually too. So that hurt. So my right thigh is pretty sore. Saw that rock. I didn't think it was that big though, so I had the pedal down and just pedal strike, and it threw me off. So we're gonna take it easy. Maybe do a couple. I think if the pins and the pedals were shorter, they wouldn't have gripped my shin as much and I would have slipped completely off. So it's good that the pins actually gripped me. Yeah, I sort of saw that rock. I didn't think it was that big though, so I had the pedal down and just pedal strike, and it threw me off. So we're gonna take it easy.
So that concludes that ride. That was pretty painful. I'm actually still feeling the impact of that in my right wrist, but you know, shit happens, it goes along with it. See, these are the shifters that I had on another bike, so I slapped those on and thought I'd go for another ride, take the bike for another run. I just went for a local ride up to the pipeline, so this is up into Derailleurs. It's a beautiful ride. It's about an hour loop just from my doorstep, so it's pretty cool to have this real local to me. That concludes all the riding clips. Thanks for hanging around. I'll see you in the next one. There's a couple more little clips of repairing the bottle cage. I go over that just quickly. Drilled a hole in each of the broken faces and then I cut a nail to fit it inside those holes, which helped align it. And then I used some JB Weld over that. This is it with the second lot of JB Weld. For the first lot, it just cracked after I gave it a stress testing. So I think it was too thin, so I just put a huge dollop on, and it seems to be holding really nicely. Now it has a bell too. Fuck! The next video is a resto mod, so I'll see you then.